So, hi Pragya, congrats for becoming an IES officer this time.
Thank you so much, sir.
So, yeah, please, I'll ask questions, but let me just start with your background first. So, where you did your schooling from, your undergrad, your postgrad, and how you started preparing for IES.
Okay. Um, I have completed my schooling, my 10th and 12th from Patna, Carmel High School. And then I have done my graduation on economics honors from Patna Women's College. And then I have done my master's from IGNU. So during my master's, I came to Ghaziabad after graduation, and I decided that I have to prepare for civil services. But simultaneously, I enrolled in masters from IGNU.
Okay.
So yes, in that time frame, I realized that I am more tilted towards inclined towards economics, and that is how I realized that no, I should go for Indian Economic Services, and I started preparation.
So, I mean, you started preparing for civils even before economic services.
Yes, sir. Initially, I was preparing for civil services, but I was not very sure
Hmm.
that I was in self-discovery mode at
Hmm.
that time. So
That age is
I
where
given,
people are in self-discovery mode.
yes, sir.
So it's like that is very good. And so how one, of course, I mean, you told that during the preparation of masters you realized that economic services is this. So what was this year? I mean, when you started preparing for economic services seriously?
It was in 2019. I started
2009. So
preparing seriously, yes, sir.
you passed out from IGNU, from masters in IGNU from which year? In which year?
In
2019.
2018, 18.
2018. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes. So how you prepared notes?
Uh, Firstly, I read the syllabus and I read the previous year question papers, and then I made the priority areas which are more important and which are least important, and then I did one time reading first, because in the first reading, mm, some because of my background and because I was not very much aware that time about the subject. So in the first reading, it was very difficult for me to get
What
the
do you mean
things.
by according to your background? I don't understand that. What do you mean by?
According to my background, like I have done from distance education.
Hmm.
So distance education, we have to do self studies.
But it,
So that was the issue.
I've seen many people from IGNU now clearing this paper.
Yes, sir.
So
Yes,
it is
sir.
not like only somebody from premier institutes only can get through. I mean, there are people from
Yes, sir.
different universities across India. They are clearing this paper.
Yes,
So
sir.
it is. I mean, it is not that only people from D school or JNU or ISI only they can clear. Anybody could clear.
Yes, sir. But
So.
initially, I had that fear, I would say,
Hmm.
that no, I'm not from DU, so I will not be able to do it.
Hmm.
Initially, I had that fear, but somehow I overcome that fear.
That's good. Okay. And so, I mean, one point which I want to add on is, as she said that she read the she read the syllabus properly. So one point which I always tell my students also, and I must have told you as well, that write a 2.5 or 3 page note for every word in the syllabus, whatever is given to you. That is very important
Yes, sir.
because I mean, from in the first go, you should have, and you have all the books available with you. So if you start making notes and everything, um, you will eventually realize that bhaiya, you can make 2.5 or 3 page note for every word of the syllabus.
Yes,
So
sir.
that is very, very important. Acha, I want to ask you, as you said, that in the first reading, so what is that first reading?
First reading, I read two times one book.
So which,
So
for different subjects, which book you referred?
for econometrics, paper one, I went through IGNOU's material because I find it pretty simpler than Gujarati.
Hmm.
Then I shifted to Gujarati for some of the other topics. And for microeconomics, I referred HL Ahuja, advanced. For paper two, macroeconomics, I read Froyen. and selected reading of H.L. Ahuja, macroeconomics.
Hmm.
And for growth and development, I read Jhingan book. And
Hmm.
for international economics also, I read International Economics of Jhingan.
Hmm.
Everybody says that we should read Dominic book, but I didn't have that book and I never read that book. So I was more comfortable with
I
Jhingan. So I read
think
Jhingan.
trade theories, I mean, whichever book you follow, I mean, you should always try to see that are you able to answer the past year questions from that book or not?
Yes, sir.
If
Yes,
you're
sir.
able to answer past year questions from Jingan, there is absolutely no need of reading any other book. But
Yes.
personally, I like Krugman or Salvatore more as compared to Jingan because I have not seen that book for international eco. But for
Yes,
development
sir.
eco, yes, I have seen. So if you look at that development eco wali book now, what I have realized is they have all the models, but somewhere it
Yes.
becomes too repetitive that it is difficult to read through that book. It has all the topics for sure, but it becomes too repetitive that it becomes very, very difficult to read. I don't know how you've read that. So I mean, generally, what when I made notes, I have read Jhingan for understanding, okay, in the first go. Then I have to go back to Thalwal or Debraj Ray for few topics. That is the better way. So you did only Jhingan.
Yes, sir. I did only Jhingan.
Jhingan all the
Because I wanted to make it very simple. It was very difficult to me that read one book and then make notes from that book and then shift to other book and then add that extra things on in the notes. So it was quite complicated for me. So I referred one book only.
So, I mean, yesterday I had an interview with one other student of mine. So he also said this. So what he said is that he made notes from my notes first, and then the book, and then he also seen internet for few things. For example, India perspective
Mm-hmm.
for every kind of model which is there. So they have seen the India perspective because IES paper also asks you a lot this. So
Yes,
is
sir.
the Guardian model uh, I mean, it could be applied in India today. Is this unbalanced growth theory applicable for an economy like India today? So that is there. Okay. What about
Uh, that I did. I didn't use internet for that. When I read newspapers,
Hmm.
I followed Mint. So in the editorials, they used very different models like Harry-Dommer model,
How? I mean, that's a
and
very good point. That
yes,
is
sir. So
very good
I
point.
did that. I didn't relied on many sources.
Hmm.
I read Mint. So
Hmm.
through editorials, I got enough connection between the theoretical part and then apply it to Indian economy. That was I thought that was fair enough for me. I
Yeah,
thought.
that's a very good point. So, I mean, people should be reading, I mean, if not the entire newspaper, I
Yes,
mean, they should be reading the editorial pages. I think I've told you while I was taking your interview
yes,
also this
sir.
year. So I
Yes,
also
sir.
this for last 6, 7, 8 months, see the editorial portion of the economy section. Matlab,
Yes, sir.
I mean, wherever editors have written about Indian economy, read all of them. So you'll get a lot of opinions about the economy.
Yes, sir.
I think there it becomes very, and this is a very good point. So whosoever is
And
listening,
I have read some of the books of economists. Like I do what I do, and some the poor economics. I have read some of the books, so I use the points from there also because I felt that was very catchy lines. So I used
okay, but
those lines.
this is what we cannot generalize in a sense. I mean, we
Yes,
can't say everyone to read these novels and all.
yes,
But
exactly,
I mean,
exactly.
reading of newspaper is something which could be told that
Yes,
yes, I mean, you should read the editorial section of the Economic Times or Mint or Hindu Business Line, whichever, and that too in the Indian economy section. Just say what is happening in the agriculture, what is happening in industry, what is happening in this, that.
yes. Sir.
The other. So that's a very
Even the newspaper covers very widely the monetary
good.
aspect of the economy, like money supply and even the planning part. I have read a few days ago about hyper globalization.
Hmm.
So in Indian Express. So I think that those things can be used in answer
Hmm.
writing.
So but that is something that is a habit which we have to inculcate. I mean, this is not
Yes,
given in
sir.
the book. I mean, so that's a continuous habit which has to be inculcated.
Yes, sir. Yes,
This
sir.
differs maybe your answers from the other answers. That is there. Okay. And what about how do you prepare maths?
Sir, I was not very good at maths, and even my this paper, this year's exam was not so good. I'm expecting only 50 marks.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Because
yes,
I
sir.
okay, yeah, you tell, then I'll tell. Huh. Hmm.
Yes, sir. And even when I took test series from your classes, I texted Nishant sir that no, Aditya sir,
Hmm.
I will not be able to give paper one test because that is so difficult for me.
Hmm.
So I thought that the paper one has 200 weightage, 200 marks, and test papers have have much more weightage. So let's focus on other papers, English, GS, which might other student might ignore that subject. I'll focus on those subjects rather than focusing on my weakness and giving myself anxieties. I will do some basic work on paper one. We do have theoretical questions from paper one also, and even basic econometrics, which I'll be able to solve. And I'll focus my strength. I'll focus on my strengths, my theoretical part. So, in my 2019 exam, I scored 120 in paper four.
Oh,
So
very good.
yes, sir.
Very
So
good.
I decided that theoretical paper is my strength. I'll focus on that. So I focused on all the other papers rather than focusing on that. So that was my strategy.
That was, I mean, I remember when I was checking one of your paper, I mean, I told Aditya, okay, ask her to solve maths, ask her to solve maths, because I think I've written this
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
on as a remark there also. But having said that, somebody who is coming from a different background and all this, it is not at all difficult. Everybody could do it. So if even if you're coming from any other background, I mean, we have also created a lot of basic videos. So
Yes, sir.
just have a patience of going through all the basic videos, read variant, you will be able to understand everything, whatever is going to be
Sir,
asked.
I have watched your videos that helped me a lot, and they are available in the internet for free,
Hmm.
and they were very helpful for me, I
Hmm.
would say. Even I texted Aditya sir that sir, the videos are very good. They have a lot of concepts, and it helped me a lot. So, no, I have prepared from those sources for
My,
paper
my,
one.
my only concern is, I mean, you have made a good point that I'll focus on my strength and all this,
Yes,
but we can't make our weak point that weak
yes,
that
sir. I
I mean,
agree.
somebody else is able to score much higher than that. But that's
Yes, sir.
given the time, we have to optimize the time, right?
Yes, sir.
I mean, what I am trying to say is that if somebody does all of those videos, you will have fair idea of
Yes, sir.
solving the questions. May not be all, but fair idea of solving it. So you will go through that grind and read variant. You will be able to understand it. That
Yes, sir.
is my take on that. Acha, how you prepared for what I realize is that paper three is very scoring somehow.
Yes, sir.
And I mean, to my surprise, I mean, people from very premier institutes also, they might not get very good marks in paper one. They might get very overconfident for micro and maths and stats. So, but in paper three, people are getting good marks. I think the syllabus for the third paper is little smaller as I mean it is little smaller as compared to the other papers, and
Yes,
it is
sir.
finite also. And I have seen there is a trend in the paper three papers also, question papers also. You can just find
Yes,
out
sir.
the trend. So, how you prepared for paper three? Which books you follow?
For paper three, I completely relied on my IGNU sources because
Hmm.
the industrial parts and the planning parts were already covered in paper one preparation and
Hmm.
for growth and development preparation.
Hmm.
So for public finance, I went through R.K. Lekhi's book, R.K. Lekhi's public finance book.
R.K. Lekhi, right?
Yes,
I
sir.
mean, generally, I tell students is H.L. Bhatia. That is the
Yes,
another
sir.
that's very good book. But
Yes,
it's
sir.
huh. Hmm.
Because I have read these books in my graduation, so I thought I should not focus on other books because I matched the syllabus, everything was there. And then for environmental part, I completely relied on IGNO material. Some internet sources I have referred for, like for example, the environmental Kuznets curve.
Hmm.
So I have read one article which applied that curve to India's perspective. So I
Okay.
have read one article on that.
So, I mean, to summarize, the point is that you've read this R.K. Lekhi, IGNU notes, and few things from the internet for
Internet, yes, sir.
particularly.
Yes.
That's good. And for Indian Eco, which book you followed?
Indian economy, I liked Indian economy, reading Indian economy, but there was not any particular source for that. I could have find answers from anywhere. But
Hmm.
for student, Mission Puri was my base book. I like to read that book, and it has so many datas, and every aspect is covered from that book. And I also read Uma Kapila. Uma Kapila was just for some of the catchy lines or catchy words, if I could get from there. It was for that only, but the whole preparation from was from Mishanpur.
Okay, but I want to add on one thing. So I think in yesterday's interview also I made this point. I mean, few days back I bought one book of IC Dhingra for uh,
Okay,
for Indian Eco. That somehow at this juncture I like it better than Mishra and Puri. So it's not that
okay,
I'm promoting that book. It's a better book, so that is the reason I'm telling everyone. So that's a good
okay.
book. You can use whichever book you found. I mean, Mishra and Puri, or I think Sundaram and Dutt is also there.
That's
And,
also one.
but the point is, the way to read Indian Eco is you can't read these 600, 700 pages book. It's a
Yes,
very, very huge. So the better way is read the syllabus, read the word in the syllabus, take it out, take search for that word in the book, and then write 2 or 3 pages for that word. Similarly, see which questions have been asked and then add on to the notes. That
yes,
is
sir.
the better way to prepare for Indian Eco part. And of course, I mean, reading newspapers, it goes without saying. So
Yes,
that
sir.
is one thing. So now, what is the next step? So you'll be preparing for PhD later on, or what? So this is it.
Sir, right now I'm enjoying this journey,
Hmm.
but yeah, somewhere in my head.
I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you. How you prepared for GS and English?
Okay, for English, I didn't do many things, but I referred one book of uh, I'm not able to recall the name. Uh, Unique, I think Unique IAS or something is there. I have read that book. I'll mention it somewhere. So I have read that for pressy writing and for paragraph, what are the basic of those things? What are the rules to follow? I read it from there, and newspaper was enough for the preparation for English. And for GS, I completely relied on NCRTs, except for polity because Lakshmi Kant is a better book for that. And
You read
for
Lakshmikant for an Indian Economic Services GS Polity.
actually, I didn't read it for especially for that because I have been preparing for civil services earlier, so I knew I had notes. So I didn't do it specially during my preparation for Indian economic services, but that was my source. And for a modern history spectrum, that too I did earlier, and I had
Civil
notes, so
services one,
I
right?
revised it. Yes,
While you were preparing for civil services, you might have done.
yes, sir. Yes, sir. I had notes of those books, so I did it from there. And for geography and environment, I did NCRT, and vision I is current affairs. So
I
that
want to add
was it.
one point in the sense that, particularly for GS, I think the first go should be NCRTs 11, 12 for
Yes, sir.
history, political science, and all. And there are many videos, many channels which are available who have taught this NCRT in a compact way. So you
Yes,
can
sir.
just listen to them and make notes. And secondly, uh, uh, you will have to see the trend in the paper, what kind of questions they are asking. And then you'll have to prepare few more depending on that.
Yes, sir.
Personally can't ask people who are preparing for economic services to go in such a depth to prepare entire polity
Yes,
from
sir.
Meghan. That will become too huge and too burdensome because they also
Yes,
have
sir.
those 800 marks of syllabus of economics. But I mean, whatever. I mean, you might
But
get
what students can do, like there are some sections, parliament or
Yeah.
fundamental rights. They are repetitive topics, so
But
they can go.
But
Yes, sir.
what I also believe is on the internet also, there might be some site which have which would have compacted Lakshmikant also.
Lakshmikant, exactly.
So,
Yes, sir.
so you can just at least write those points with you. And
Yes, sir.
and for geography, etc., you will have NCRTs and all. So
Yes,
you
sir.
should know that how far and how deep you have to go. You can't just, because this is an endless sea. I mean,
Yes,
you can't just go too deep into it. You also have to see, understand that what is a trade-off. There's a trade-off of
yes.
time. So that is definitely
And the
there.
trade-off of marks also, because we have 100 marks paper and you cannot focus
Ah,
all your time and energy in paper,
this
GS
thing
paper.
Austin also told me yesterday. I mean, he said, I mean, whatever you do in GS, I don't completely agree with him, but I mean, to a certain extent, yes, that whatever you do in GS, you can't get very good marks, right? So the variability in marks is not going to be too much. So you will also have to understand that uh, how much you can put in as an effort. मतलब इतना मत कर दो कि बहुत ही वीक हो जाए जीएस, लेकिन ऐसा भी मत कर लो कि अगर बहुत अच्छा भी लिख दोगे तो ऐसा नहीं है कि तुम्हारे को 90 दे देंगे 100 में से. सो नथिंग
Yes,
लाइक.
sir.
सो फॉर
Uh,
श्योर.
but in my 2022 paper, when marks were out, and I was not selected for the final result, but after I have seen my marks, I
लास्ट.
got last year, 2020. I was
21.
so 20. I was not able to give the exam of 21 because my interviews were one day before the exam.
ओ यस यस यस, आई रिमेम्बर.
Yes, sir.
माय स्टूडेंट्स, उन्होंने कहा कि हमारा शायद एक दिन बाद इंटरव्यू था और रिटर्न
एक
एक
दिन
दिन
पहले.
पहले था. सो आई रिमेम्बर दैट. या.
That happened. So I was not very much sure that I'll give the exam, and somehow I didn't give the exam. But yes, I when I saw my marks, I realized I had 50. I got 50 marks in my paper one. Huh. Paper one, economics paper one.
जनरल को, हाँ, ओके.
Yes, sir. And it was out of 200. And in GS paper, I got 48 marks out of 100.
हम्म.
Yes, sir. So when I compared that thing, na, I realized if I focus a bit more in my GS paper, maybe I could score 55 or 50, 60 marks. And then in English, like English also 50 marks. So when I'll combine those marks, I'll get out of 200, I'll get 100, 110, 100. So I calculated it in that way. So it might compensate the paper one marks somehow. So
हम्म.
I was much more much more focused on compensating my marks from here and there.
But I mean, I think whosoever,
That was
I would what she's suggesting is that okay, fine. I mean, if my paper one is not that good, let me focus on
yes.
other things. That's one
And
strategy to
since
go
I
for.
had less time, I didn't have much time, so I'll do that.
But having said that, but my only concern is that don't make your weak point so weak that it becomes
Yes,
very
sir.
difficult, right? Because
Yes,
there
sir.
1 and 2 marks also matter a lot. And
Yes, sir.
if you can't make it stronger, but let's not make it that weak, because you
Yes,
have to
sir.
prepare at least that much what everyone else is preparing. That is for
Yes, sir.
sure. That's a competitive exam. So that is there.
No, I have prepared for paper one. I would say I have prepared, but I have done some risk management also. Disaster management,
I
I have
could see.
done.
I
Yes,
could see.
sir.
And that I could see. So,
Yes, sir.
but having said that, I mean, whatever, you must have scored very, very, very good marks in the other papers. I'm sure about it. So,
Hopefully.
and the other thing is, okay, that question was left. So what now? I mean, will you go for PhD after some time or what?
I might prepare for civil services. I'm like, I'm not very sure, but I might give one or two attempts, and then after that, I can go
But
for
right
PhD
now,
also.
better is that stay in economic services, have a feel of it. Might be you like this
Yes,
job
sir.
so much that you would not want to go anywhere else.
Yes, sir.
Or
I am right now. I have two, three options. I
hmm,
might go for PhD but that will happen only after 5 years of service. So
uh,
in that 5 years, uh, in during this journey, I have 1 2 months left. I'll read econometrics. I will brush up the topic. So I will be doing these things right now.
Thank you, Pragya. Very good. All the best and congrats. All the best for life and congrats for clearing this paper.
Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, beta. Bye bye.